We're live. Yay.
Hello.
Hi. So for those of you that have never joined, my name is Anuschka Alborzian. I'm an empowerment health coach and healer. And I've been partnering with Samar, who will go ahead and, oh, you're on mute. Hold on one sec. There, no, there we go. There we go. Unmuted. Technology.
I'm a behavioral health professional. I'm an addictionologist and I live in Virginia.
Awesome.
Anuschka, can you hear her okay?
Yeah, I was going to say your volume's a little bit low, Samar. Is it a little tiny bit?
Is that better?
When you're closer, it's
better.
When
you're closer, it comes through more clear. Yeah.
There we go.
And today we really want to welcome our special guest, Rachel Meyer, who has been my BFF since freshman year of high school, and I'm going to actually have her introduce her beautiful self.
Thank you. Thanks both Anuschka and Samara. It's really great to be able to be on here with you guys. And yeah, I'm Dr. Rachel Meyer. I'm also a clinical psychologist. Now back and practicing in Colorado Springs, but actually anywhere in Colorado since we can do online teletherapy now, which is awesome. Just a quick snippet actually about me. I practiced psychology for 10 years or so before I decided to move abroad to Mexico, lived there for the last 3 years and just returned to Colorado at the end of last year. And with the COVID-19 challenges and the increase in mental health issues that it's brought to many, I decided to come back, start a private practice, and being able to offer my services to people who are hopefully able to reach out and access some services at a time of great need.
Awesome, love it. Yes, you've always been like this heart of gold as far as I remember, Samara. She's like one that is like that grounded person, you know, like that's Rachel.
Well, no, I think so. I keep going back to your story. I remember, Rachel, when you got diagnosed, she posted, and in fact I think it was through her post that I initially found out, because I was overseas and I had just gotten back. And it happened that this lady was posting about you, and then I paid attention to it because you were tagged in her post. So
yeah, that's true. That is true. Yes, Samar's been following that whole journey closely, and yeah, it's interesting because the things she remembers and she reminds me, I'm like, oh my god, that's right, I did post that.
It is, and that brings us way back. But I was so grateful to be so close to Anuschka during that time and to be able to be there. And she's unbelievable. Her journey has been unbelievable to watch and such an inspiration.
Yeah. Thanks to you. Seriously, Samar, it's crazy because like her and her husband had just recently moved out to Baja, Mexico at that time, you know? So happened to be around the exact same time that I was going through all the things that I was going through, right? No coincidences.
What's interesting is that like when you send me the picture, Rachel looks familiar to me, but I was like, maybe I saw her around with Anuschka when, we were all out partying or something, and during those days, I didn't know. But as soon as she said that she just moved back from overseas, I was like, I know who she is now. It's from this that I made the connection.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, great. So great to finally meet you on Zoom.
Likewise. I know. It feels like we know people sometimes just through Facebook and social media, but then you actually get to have a conversation and it's different.
Right. So Rachel, tell us a little bit about your journey. Obviously, you know what Anuschka and I are doing, and what we have, like we've kind of committed to these daily tips, and we're doing a live every Friday. I actually contacted Anuschka initially to begin with, and I was like, hey, let's do something, and then this came of it.
Yeah.
Very open to it, and all of this came of it, which has been amazing. So I'm really wondering what you're experiencing as a mental health professional, as a clinical psychologist, kind of coming back to the field, and share with us.
Yeah, it's definitely been interesting to watch, and I think part of the reason that sparked my interest to get back into the field more specifically, because I've kind of taken a side route on nutrition and health and wellness coaching for a little while, but they overlap, but there is definitely a special need. And with the pandemic and with the sheltering at home and social isolation, social distancing, for some people, not a lot has changed. For some people, they've got good coping skills and just wanting to stay safe. It hasn't really impacted them greatly. But other people, especially people that are extroverted or that rely a lot on social connection, or who anxiety and the unknown can bring about, or the unknown can bring up a lot more of the anxiety types of symptoms, or issues with work and income, or having to now be homeschooling. There's just so many external variables that for some people, being able to cope and not even know where to start, and that sense of overwhelm or the fear of what's going to happen, I think has brought about just a lot of new potential mental, I don't even want to call it mental health issues, but emotional health at the very least, that it's sort of a normal response to a crisis situation that many people can benefit from, even just having a safe place to talk about it, to brainstorm, to be able to have some additional coping strategies at their fingertips, even to survive the next few weeks or months until things start to settle down a little bit. And I think having someone else who's sort of unbiased, who maybe is grounded or able to provide just that sense of calm, can even be beneficial for a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's one of the things that, you know, I remember, I don't know if it was another live or a daily tip or what it was. I can't remember at this point, because I think we're on like week 6 at this point, right? I don't know. But yeah, like venting right now, you know, I really believe that is so crucial, because when we don't let it out, it just goes in, right?
Right.
So it's like the worst thing that we can do to our body and create is that dis-ease, which then creates disease, right? And it, you know, causes the immune system to weaken and make us more susceptible to something like COVID-19, right?
When you might not have even been, you might have had a strong immune system that could have fought it off, but the pure fact of the fear and either that fight or flight response, some people will retract and do nothing, and then they stew in the fear or their thoughts around it, or they try to fight and they try to do too much and they exhaust their immune system, and cortisol increases in those things. There's so much in terms of, you know, Anuschka, especially with the meditation and the mindset and the mindfulness and being present right here, right now, and figuring out what can you do in this moment, rather than worrying too much about what's coming that we don't know, or stewing too much in the past about things that you can't change, can really help with that fear response.
You know, I kind of feel like the more we try to control, the worse we make things for ourselves, because we forget that we're really not in that much control of what happens, right? And the more present we are, that's where, you know, we're actually in a lot of control. Is like this present moment. Right. But we have a tendency as humans to kind of concentrate on this, like 2 weeks from now, or what's going to happen in a month from now. And we forget that planning isn't controlling. Planning is being prepared for what may happen in the future. It's not controlling the future. And this pandemic has done such a weird thing for us that it has kind of kicked us forward into trying to control. And that brings so much anxiety, because we're so then focused on the future and what that may be. And I mean, really, we have no idea. It's like on a daily basis, the information that we receive.
No, yeah, and nobody knows. Not one single person knows, you know, what the future holds by any means. And it's like, yeah, to me, like, I'm always about what's the gift in this, right? And so I constantly am seeing the gift, and like on a daily basis. And like one of the biggest things has been to just surrender to the flow of life, you know, and you know, and it can, for those that have the, you know, control freak, you know, within them, you know, which a lot of us do. And I feel like this is the perfect time that it shines that light and brings about that shadow, you know, within them, to really see that, hey, no, we don't have control of like the external world, you know, but what can we do here?
Right. And I think part of that too goes to the fact of how much information is being put out that is so vastly different, and you can get in that information overload and suck yourself in and start to make yourself absolutely crazy, either finding more and more sources and more information to support something internally that you feel, but then if you go completely the opposite way, there's contradicting information, and you never know what to believe and what to do and what to follow, and then people get sucked in, and it just will continue to stew that internal fear and that craziness. So partly, like you're saying, Anuschka, to say surrender, just let go. All I can do is focus on me and my family right here, this moment, my emotions, how I'm feeling, what I can do for someone else nearby, and focusing on that can get you so much farther.
Yeah, because it's like we all know what we seek is what we find,
Absolutely.
right? So it's like if you're in that, I love that you brought that up, Rachel, and like this is something that I wanted to talk about today, because I don't know how much you guys have noticed that there's vast differences in opinions right now. I mean, it's almost like, who cares about liberal and conservative or Republican? Like, it's like, no, it's like this view versus this view. And it's literally like, I'm seeing like people battling it out, and both sides have great, evidence, arguments, whatever, right? And at the end, we all are going to have opinions, So it's like, again, like what we're saying here, what Rachel, you mentioned, it's like, yeah, go back down to the family side, to love, because it's like anytime there's any opinions, judgments of any kind, it's like that's when love is missing, which is the last thing we need while going through this. It's like to not have love within our bodies,
Right, for sure.
So Rachel, what can you, tips, advice, I think a lot of times we tell people like be present here and now, focus on this particular moment, but a lot of people don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
Right?
Much easier said than done.
Much easier said than done, right?
Yes.
And so can you give us some advice? Can you give us some tips for people who are listening?
Yeah, for sure. And I think a lot of it takes practice, and a lot of it you also have to kind of let go of that need or feeling of being perfect, or if it doesn't go the way you first thought it would go, then try again the next time. And sometimes I'll say just as simple as, okay, right now we're sitting here, we're having a conversation. Can I focus on the words that are coming out of Anuschka's mouth? Can I look at your hair, Samar, and recognize that it's gray? Can I pay attention to the room that I'm sitting in right now and look that there's a gray wall and I see a green tree out in front of me? What is happening right now in this moment to try to stop the thoughts of the 100 other things that might be going through your brain? If you take it a step further and do some of the more kind of structured meditation that Anuschka does, she's advanced over the last 3 years of practicing to the point that she needs nothing around her. She can be in silence, light a candle, and go for an hour. Many people can't do that. So I like to look at maybe even a YouTube guided meditation for 5 minutes, maybe 3 minutes, maybe even 1 minute.
Yep.
Can you sit, have someone guide you through just listening to your breath, breathing in and breathing out, and say, for that 1 minute, I was able to stop for a moment and just be very present. I think doing things like taking a walk, as simple as it might be, to walk up and down the block, but while you're taking that walk, to just notice what's around you. Just point out, even talk, if you have to say out loud, I'm noticing a green tree. I noticed this red car that drove down the street. I'm noticing. It just practices, it helps your body practice being in the moment until you can get to that space of recognizing that you're thinking thoughts. A lot of it is kind of process oriented to even know what you're doing in that moment. So if you can catch yourself worrying about the bill that's coming up in 2 weeks, that there's nothing that you can do necessarily at the moment, or worrying about it isn't going to work, but okay, so the bill's coming up in 2 weeks. Maybe I sit down right now and I brainstorm for the next 5 minutes, what are all of my options? What are, either any sort of deferment of the bill? What is something that I don't have to spend an extra $5 on this week that might go to it? Is there anyone in my family that could help contribute? But if that's one thing, sitting down and focusing on the planning stage rather than the worrying amount of it. Or sometimes I even say, okay, let's limit worry time. So you are going to have things that you're going to worry about. There are thoughts that are going to pop in your mind. Can you say every day at 1 o'clock for 20 minutes. That's going to be my worry time. I can let all the thoughts come. I can write them all down. I can have my list of worry. But outside of that time, then what can I do to try to not worry anymore, because just the worrying isn't going to change anything per se. A couple of initial thoughts maybe that come to mind.
Totally.
It's so interesting because a lot of the things that you say, that's kind of what I normally say too. I'm like, let's use our senses, sense of taste. What are you tasting right now? And sometimes we're completely unaware of the fact that even though we're not eating, there is a lingering taste of the last thing we had. And we're completely unaware of it, like using our senses to be present in this like very, very present moment in time. So thank you for sharing those. You were going to say something, Anuschka, and I think I cut you off.
Oh, no. I was just going to say, yeah, that's totally like, I love that. And it's like, again, back just to the venting part, that I love that you say, yeah, still make the time to like worry or vent, really, because that's necessary as well. And, you know, like I love the saying of, you can't put rose petals on a, you know, pile. I'm sure you guys have heard this. You know, you can't put rose petals on top of a pile of crap, because it's still going to smell like crap. So you definitely need to get that out and not make it, because there's a difference between venting and complaining. Right. And I do believe that a lot of people don't actually realize the difference. And it's like, that's a great place to also start noticing. Is it, okay, is this a vent, or am I just complaining about the same thing over and over again? Right? Is this a pattern, or is this just something I need to get out? Right?
Or then the action that you can take, vent or complain, but then what is a potential solution to the problem?
Yeah.
You might not solve it, but can you begin to change the mindset, or recognize that maybe it's not as big of a problem as you're making it to be, or maybe there's more worry because of the unknown, when in reality this all could change next week and we'll have a vaccine and who knows, and everyone would be fine. Was it worth all the worry and effort that you put into it unnecessarily? And sometimes just even getting into action or trying to find, like you said, Anuschka, from the very beginning, it's totally your perspective. And I use the analogy a lot of times, again, like we're sitting and looking at each other. So Samar, I'm looking and I see this painting in the background. I think of maybe a lake and some grass and some trees. You probably weren't even thinking about that. From your perspective, you're seeing something completely different from that perspective if we were to flip it around. And so I believe everything always has sort of two sides of the coin, and depending on the way that you're looking at it, you can see the fear, you can see the negative, you can see the potential consequences, or like you said, Anuschka, so many of these great things that are also coming out of it. And so the positives we tend to lose sight of when you get too concerned about the negative or the fear. And so can you stop and just say, hey, either one, it could be this much worse, and have gratitude for it not being that. At least this is happening. I still have my health. I still have my family. I still have social media and Zoom to connect with people this way. Or sometimes putting yourself in someone else's shoes, as hard as that can be, of someone who really truly does have it worse, and to then still recognize where you're at and the progress towards more positivity, even in challenging situation.
Yeah. And I do feel like, and I know you were going to say something, Samara, real quick, but I do feel like a lot of this stuff also is bringing up triggers, you know? And so it's like, you know, as positive as we can be, we're all getting triggered by, you know, whatever already was pre-existing within us. And then we add meaning on top of all these triggers, you know? And so it's like, again, looking back and saying, okay, well, like what, you know, like Samara, I know you've already talked about, you know, like noticing the feelings, like noticing where is this coming from? Like, what am I actually feeling and whatnot?
One of the things that I use actually quite a bit in my approach is I say every circumstance, situation, scenario, no matter how painful it is or how joyful it is, has joy in it. We just have a tendency to focus on whatever. If it's like the most painful experience of our life, we don't recognize the joy that's also being experienced. We recognize the pain. So pain has a tendency to override, I feel, if you're not paying attention to the other emotions that, or other stimuli, you know, whatever that's happening that triggers our emotions, right? And one of the things that I normally share with my patients is like my dad's passing, right? And I read this someplace, and then I went back to my own experiences, and I'm like, okay, the worst experiences of my life, emotional experiences, like loss is, I don't know anything else that tops it, at least for me so far, right? And then I had to really sit down and think about that particular day, those hours, right, that were extremely painful, and find joy in it. And so then I went back to the pictures, and the joy that I finally found in that was like my whole family, we were hugging one another, and there was a lot of love going around. But see, like not concentrating on the joy that's also happening, right? And the love that's being spread, you then have a tendency as a human to focus on the negative. And every time you talk about that event, you focus on the negative. So comparing that, and, you know, when I talk to my patients, that's what, you know, that's the example that I use, because it's such an extreme example of the reality of my life, for example. And now with this COVID-19, well, of course, I mean, I've lost income. I've lost more than half of my income, right? And people have lost their jobs. People are like in a lot worse circumstances and situations than I am, for example, in particular, right? So, but even then, there are moments of joy, and I think it's so particularly important during like hard times to say, let me just focus, even if it's momentary, on the momentary joy that, you know, is flying around. You know, what type can I, you know, start to share love rather than my worry? And I think that's one of the gifts and experiences that I'm really having, that, you know, that helps me get through yet another day of this being at home and not at work and not at office. A lot of this face, you know, time and Zooms and screen time that makes me exhausted and cranky, right? There is joy still in it too. So
I would agree wholeheartedly, everything that you said. And even one step farther, if in the moment it's harder, you see little joy and you see still a lot of the negative, always, I believe, to know that it's working out. Something's coming down the road that will still also be either a lesson learned or something that will move you towards growth, if you can choose to look at it as a growth opportunity. This challenge, when we get through it, we're going to come out stronger. We're going to come out better as humanity. We're going to come back stronger, recognizing how important social connection and community really is. That, yes, there's always some joy. Definitely agree. And also to know that something even better is coming, and to look forward to that, even if you don't know what it is quite yet in the moment.
right.
And it's always a choice. I think that's one of the biggest things that people, you know, don't realize. They, you know, when we look at life, and there's, you know, those that are like, oh, life is just happening to me, rather than life is happening for me, which is, when you say life is happening for me, that gives you the opportunity to always look for the joy, look for the gift, look for the opportunity in whatever the circumstance is. Like, my favorite saying is living life to the fullest in the face of any circumstance. That's like been my tagline since, you know, since before my journey, actually. And then I lived it. And so then it literally just resonated with me, right? And so to me, it's like, when you have the awareness, that right there gives you the choice. I get it. If you're not aware, it's hard to choose because you're not aware. But as soon as you have awareness, then boom, right there, you have choice.
That's true, because once, yeah, I always say awareness is half of the work, like recognition and becoming aware that that's half of it. And the other half is you have to do something about it, right? Like the brain, and the analogy that I use is, once we learn how to read, I can't point to a sign and say, look, but don't read it, because your mind's going to read it. Whether you're going to verbalize it or not, that's a different story, or act like. But your brain is, so once you know, the brain goes into discovery of, you know, whatever it is. So, and these are like, I think these are the small tricks that the human intelligence, the gift of the human intelligence, these are like the little tricks that it plays on us, right? So then the point becomes, how do I navigate that to make my life more joyful, or make my life better, or make this experience more exciting or more peaceful, or, you know, whatever it may be.
Totally.
I know, Anuschka, I'm switching gears just slightly, but I think it kind of overlaps with what you're saying, Samar. Anuschka, you're familiar with Abraham Hicks, obviously.
Yeah.
Samar, I don't know if you are, but one of the things that in the teachings by Abraham Hicks is this 17-second rule. And in the moment, when you can catch yourself having these thoughts, one way or the other, but generally it's the negative thoughts, and often it can be the first thing in the morning. So you wake up after you've been asleep, kind of the mind's been at rest, you've cleared all of the thoughts. First thing in the morning, for many people, it's immediately getting back into either the worry or the out of control feeling or the overwhelm, or simply because they picked up their phone and then they saw some sort of Facebook post or a news article, it just starts to generate a lot of these feelings that we're talking about and things that get people stuck, where Abraham Hicks says, if you can catch it, just have that awareness, then you have 17 seconds to do something about it and to change, and to at least try to flip the script and start to think about something positive, change it and roll with it for that amount of time until there's more positivity and more positive thoughts coming.
To add to that, before 17 seconds before it goes into the subconscious, or there's like something around the subconscious.
Right, that you've kind of lost that ability to control it, right, as much. So one of the things that I also suggest, and that I try to practice on my own as well, first thing in the morning, one, don't pick up the phone. Don't, no computer, no phone, no ability to allow anything external to come in. So then you're only in control of your own. And I'm going to say that with the exception of, I try to do a podcast or guided meditation of sorts, but I picked it out the night before. So all I have to do is press play on the YouTube channel of the podcast or the meditation that I'm going to listen to, that is something very positive, very energizing, very uplifting, whether it's a guided meditation or it's some inspirational, motivational talk, that again allows me to be present, mindful, in the right space, but I don't have to necessarily control it, but it's limiting the chances of those negative thoughts starting off the day into that downward spiral.
Totally. Yeah, I love starting my mornings with meditation, and I use my phone, but like you said, it's like, and I noticed like there are times where I'm about to get on and then I get like a message or a phone call or something, and it completely throws me off. And I'm just like, dang it, you know?
That do not disturb feature. You got to keep it on.
I know.
All the
So
way
yeah, and it's like just going on like Wi-Fi rather than, you know, I don't know. But yeah, it definitely takes practice, you know, like everything else. It's building a muscle, it's building the emotional muscle, right?
Yeah, well, you know, I mean, I think that today with one of my patients, I was talking about the process that a lot of us are so accustomed to these momentary fixes. Like you go to a fast food restaurant and they give you this meal in a matter of 2 minutes, like literally, like you order and they turn around and they grab it and they put it in front of you. And you think that's how life is. And that's actually not how life is. What life is that it's a process and it takes time. We are just coming out of the habit of experiencing that time, right? Mm-hmm. And it's this road, and on this road there are bumps and potholes and, you know, different speeds and uphills and downhills and cruises. There are all sorts of stuff, right? And when we don't pay attention to the process of anything that's happening, right, we then have a tendency to just concentrate literally on the tip of our nose, just really what we see here, because then we're so bombarded with everything else as well that consumes us, right? And again, this is one of those crazy times that we have no choice but to kind of pay attention a little bit.
Yeah.
Am I going to be distracted? I mean, there are only so many things in my house that can distract me. And beyond that, I don't have many distractions. And I've actually made a conscious decision not to do these like Zoom parties and Zoom, you know, happy hours and things of that nature, because I really feel like while all of that is great and it works for a lot of people, But on the flip side, I'm spending 8-9 hours on this screen. Like I don't have enough in me to do that stuff, right? So I don't even have that distraction going on. So I mean, like, there comes a time that after like day 4, day 5, week 6, now you're really faced with whatever it is that you're supposed to be faced with, that all of these distractions around us in our world kind of, you know, hid for you. They helped you hide it, right? And not face it. So it's, I mean, I don't know. This is, and I say this, and sometimes I'm criticized really harshly, but I'm just going to say it. You know, I think a lot more, as horrible as this pandemic seems like it is, and the many lives that we've lost, and people who have really like faced it and dealt with it on a health level, right? I think a lot of wonderful things has come of it so far and will come of it.
I agree. Yeah.
I absolutely believe it. I mean, starting from like quality of air in like major cities, how like, people are reporting that I can see a blue sky now, right? To the fact that we have all had to kind of tune into our nuclear families, right?
So much is, to me, it's like, I see, and I get it, we're in the middle of it, but just like, you know, when I was my brain tumor journey, you know, in the middle of it, I wasn't like, oh my God, this is the best thing ever. No, it wasn't like in the middle. And now I was present, which is, I believe, what this is doing for everyone. You know, we've been talking about being present, noticing. So this is the perfect opportunity for so many people to take that on and to live moment by moment. Because literally we're getting news of all kinds moment by moment. So we cannot grab something and say, oh, this is the way it is, because literally it can shift in the next second, right? And so to me, I'm like, that is a beautiful gift. And like the whole thing around health, you know, so many people were just like, oh, who cares? Like, whatever, like health doesn't mean anything. And now look, without it, everything is shut down because people are on freak out mode that they're going to die, you know? I mean, unfortunately, this, you know, I think that's one of the things is like, again, this is not something I talk about a lot, but I really believe, like, again, we always give meaning to things, right? Well, this virus is associated with death. And that to me is what's creating so much fear in people. You know, rather than being like, this is a virus, yes, it's more aggressive than the regular flu, and it's still a virus. Right? Whereas people are like, here, you know, coronavirus or COVID-19, and immediately death pops up in their mind, you know? And it's like, that right there is what is like, no, let's not go there. And let's look at, this is time to be healthy, making our health first.
And what are the other things that you can do to make a difference that will continue to keep you healthy and to keep the mind and the physical body healthy, and getting away from all the screen time? Samar, I totally agree with, especially those of us that work all day on the screen. Yeah, the last thing you want to do is do this, but the weather for the most part is beautiful. I think around at least talking in America right now, around the country is beautiful. Being able to get outside, do things, you know, the gyms are closed, and you know, that's horrible because we can't go to the gym to work out. Well, so get outside, go hike, go walk around, social distance, but enjoy nature, enjoy the beautiful clean air that we're actually having. I haven't walked this much in years. I mean, it's been awesome for sure. Or to teach your body a new type of exercise that you're not used to doing. We're out doing all kinds of different calisthenics and HIIT exercises that aren't, you know, weightlifting, but it's body weight. And it's just taking that different perspective of, okay, well, I can't do this, but what can I do? What has this opened up? And force yourself, you know, I think even not alone, to just do something different, to say, okay, what would I normally do? And let's do the opposite, or let's do something different, causes a whole new chain reaction in the brain, creates new neural pathways. You know, you normally brush your teeth with your right hand, try doing it with your left hand. If you make your coffee first, try eating breakfast and then having your coffee. These little things that really can
just... toilet paper, have you heard of that one? Switching your toilet
paper? Yeah. I have tried, but it gives you something else to think about. And like you said, you know, rather than just right here, always expecting the next thing, it kind of makes you recognize the process a little bit more of what's happening, just by doing little things to shake it up and shift gears.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah.
You should join us every week.
I know, this has been awesome. Yeah, I'm looking to see, I'm seeing people are watching off and on, just to put it out there. If, you know, any questions, any way we can support anyone that's watching right now, we'd love to, you know, provide the support. That's what we're doing this for, you know, sharing our experiences and
ask particular questions that you have.
absolutely.
You can message it. You don't have to post it on the link. That's easier, of course, if you do.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I don't know in the past if you guys have listed your websites or ways to contact. I'm happy to if anyone wants to reach out.
Yes, please. Go ahead. Yes.
Yeah.
Sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't think I've ever like said my website's there, but you can't actually read it. It's so tiny. But yeah, I mean, for sure, we'll have to, you know,
comments afterwards.
we can like definitely do that. I tagged you both on the Facebook Live, so you can definitely do that, share it, have more people. Oh, and yeah, so speaking of lives and whatnot, so during meditation, a lot of times, I know I've talked to Samar about this, and Rachel, I think you too, but I get like, you know, just, this is what I love about meditation. You'll just all of a sudden get like this, like, you know, I don't know, idea or some kind of like an information, and you're like, oh my God, yeah, what a great idea. And what came to me this last week was to go live with Rachel. So Rachel and I, we have accountability calls with one another every week. And so we've created this, now it's like, oh my gosh, in August, right? So it's almost like going on in like a year. And so, so it just came to me, I'm like, well, instead of, you know, maybe one of the days we'll continue doing the accountability calls, and then the other day, let's go live together and talk about, so the reason I started Isogenics, you know, I think I shared it with you, right, Samar? So one of the main reasons I started is because, you know, Rachel had been using it and she had seen so many great results, and, you know, being obviously with her credentials, I was like, okay, if she does this and her sister is doing this, I'm going to do it, right? So that's what we're going to start doing on Mondays, is go live and, you know something like this, but yeah.
And I do think, yeah, it's another avenue to explore and to look at, and the impact that nutrition has on just mental health and emotional well-being in general. And when people aren't eating their body the right foods, and in terms of managing stress or having the right energy to just deal with the challenges that we're facing, it's very, very easy to slide into that slippery slope and then lose motivation, and then the additional struggles of physical health challenges are brought about. So yeah, a focus that we'll have on Mondays is maybe some of the impact that nutrition can have on helping keep you healthy through this as well.
So awesome. That's so great. You know, one of the things that when people come into my practice, I always ask them, when was the last time you had a complete physical, and what did your blood work say, basically? People don't realize that being nutritionally deprived can lead to so many mental health disorders. I mean, people don't know that, and it's like the best hidden secret out there, right?
Right.
And so I think this thing that you will do, this live that you'll do on Monday, I mean, I hope everybody kind of tunes in your networks, and, you know, and it goes way beyond that. It's so important to learn, and I always tell people, you don't have to do everything all at once. You can start with changing 1 or 2 or 3 things, and then, you know, implementing those, and once those become habits, then you pick up a couple of more, and that's how it changed. I mean, this is how I changed a lot of my habits. And I can't even say they were terrible habits or bad habits, but different habits. I brought different habits that worked best for me. So this is awesome. I'm going to look definitely forward to that.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah, I definitely want to share it on here. So somebody did ask a question here on Instagram. Lady Lou says, do you have any suggestions of meditation to increase your intuition? Absolutely. So I personally love YouTube, you know, for guided meditations of all kinds. You can look up literally just, you know, intuition, meditation for intuition, or third eye I would look at like, because third eye is intuition, right? So those are some of the, some of the things that I would search. Samar, I know you've done Vipassana, so I don't know if there's anything that you're familiar with.
Vipassana, for people who are not into the practice of meditation, Vipassana would be very difficult because you're really just focusing on the breath and this area of your body, and then it's hours. But I mean, I would literally Google intuition meditation, right? Or meditation for intuition, like those words together, and see what pops up. And if you're not in the practice of meditation, one of the best things that you can do is you should start with guided. It's good to start with guided meditation to get you.
It helps for sure.
That, after the guided meditation is over, if you notice that you can, carry yourself longer for a few minutes, and then start to get into that place in your meditation practice where you don't need somebody to guide you, I think that's when intuition starts to kick in.
Yeah, and I to some extent, I do train on intuition as well. So meditation is a great start for it. And again, being present to everything and being like sensing yourself throughout the day, that in itself makes a huge difference, because we have all, there's like 5 major different ways we can sense our intuition. There's actually 8, but 5 of them are like the main ones. So each person is different, and it really takes just noticing, well, is it that I just have a gut feeling sometimes about something? Or is it that I have like a sensation? Or is it that I just know? Like I just sometimes know, So each person has a different, way they sense their intuition. Every single person has it. Every single person. It's just a matter of practicing it and making it stronger and expanding it. Like for me, I initially started with the gut feeling. Now I see words. And now like it's even expanded further where I'm starting to see visions of, when I ask like questions and whatnot. So it really becomes like, hey, like let's start focusing on where in my body or how I'm actually sensing the intuition. And if you do want more on that, I'm more than happy to have like a one-off session with you too. So.
And I'll tell you, you should absolutely reach out to her, because I am not nearly as skilled as it, but Anushka's done a lot of coaching and training, even personally with me, on trying to get better at listening to my intuition. And I think you're absolutely right. We all know it, and it's always after the fact you can think back and be like, oh, I shouldn't have done that, or I should have done that. You knew at the time, but sometimes you didn't realize what it was that was telling you or what the right answer was. But Anushka is fabulous at helping hone in a little bit closer to those feelings, to know at least what part of the body, which sense, which feeling. For me, it is definitely the gut, at least as I know it so far. But yeah, reach out to her. She'll help you figure that out. And I do think getting in tune with yourself is so powerful, so powerful.
Yeah. And thank you. Oh, go ahead, Samar.
You and I had a moment last week or a couple of weeks ago where you're like, look, my intuition.
Yes.
And then within a few hours, you were like able to pinpoint.
Yep.
And say, okay, that's what that was.
Yep.
And I found, I did some intuition work. I have not done the amount of work that you have, Anushka, at all, but I did some intuition work. You may be familiar with Laura Day's work. I've read her books on intuition. She's out of New York. And so she has books that she's written about being an intuitive and teaches you how to learn about your intuition. And one of the things that she says is that it's there. It's just that, and then as infants and toddlers, we know exactly what to do with it. That's how we respond to the world. But then as our lives kind of go on, we learn to ignore it. And then as adults, we become really good at not even trusting it.
Yep. Absolutely. And Bruce Lipton, I just got goosebumps. That's an intuition thing. So like when you get goosebumps, for instance, if somebody says something and you get goosebumps, that actually is like your body being like, yep, that's true. So just like as an FYI. But yeah, Bruce Lipton talks about the same thing. And it's like, we pretty much, our intuition gets shut down because we start being told as children, not to, to like go by logic. rather than listen to what we want to do, you know, like what our inner guide is telling us to do, rather than seeing like every single animal out there has instinctual behavior, right? They all do. We have it too. It's just like been shut down. And so it's just a matter of practicing it. And you can have one kind of intuition, you can have all of them. The number one thing I would say for any beginner is to, when you ever say, like Rachel was saying, like, you know, oh, I knew I needed to do it this way, or I had a feeling that I shouldn't have done it that way, right? So that right there will tell you, because if you're saying I knew versus I had a feeling, that'll at least be able to narrow it down to actually see, okay, I'm, you know, one that's like a knower, or am I one that's like a feeler, right? So that's like a good start to really starting to notice your intuition.
And it is, and like anything else, this is a process. So I think it's great that you can coach people to learn about their intuition and tap into it. My God, I mean, I would definitely, you know, take you up on that.
Yeah, we'll have to do that sometime. I love intuition because it makes life so easy. It's like I'm at a point where it's like second nature for me now. And, you know, it's literally, now here's the thing though, the key is the quality of the questions that you ask. That's huge. And that's one thing that, so that's what you noticed, you know, with you, Samar, a couple weeks ago, you know, I had gotten like a no to continue these, where in fact the no was for the Farsi ones, but I hadn't asked the specific question, right? So it's like really interesting, because if you're not like super specific and not even like even saying things like right now, because right now in this moment, you know, will this benefit me, for instance, I'm having my immune booster, right? And it's like the right now is huge, or not using should or could, you know, and things like that. So there's like, but it's a fun process, and now it's like become such a natural second nature thing for me, and I believe everybody can get there.
And how long did it take you to kind of, for it to become your second nature, from the time you started to really pay attention, learn, and then really get deep into it? How much time would you say?
So at this point, thankfully, I learned the whole intuition process before I, you know, my brain tumor. And I had been practicing it to some extent then, which is why I ended up choosing, like a lot of the things I chose during, you know, that journey was intuition based. So I feel like because I was so aware that I'm like, I need to just make sure that my inner guide is okay with this. So that took a lot of practice. And then emotions block it, unfortunately. So if you have a lot of like built up emotions, or you're not releasing any emotions and whatnot, you're not going to be able to sense your intuition. So unfortunately, I had hormonal imbalances with chemo, and I wasn't able to sense my intuition for like 6-7 months until I finally released it all, and then I got back on top of it. So at this point, I feel like I started in 2016, I started learning about it, and then within this last year, I'm in another program that she, like, you know, the mentor that I work with, she's like all about energetics, you know, it's like energetic self-mastery, and intuition is like the core of it. She literally is like, if your intuition doesn't know to do this program, do not do it. Do not come in my program. Like, she's to that extent, right? She's all about it. So I feel like in this last year is when I've really mastered it, and I've like gotten it to expand to a whole new level. So it just takes, it takes practice. I don't even think it's a timing thing. It's awareness and practice.
And I don't know, maybe speaking a little bit more to the beginners still in the room. For me, also the bigger challenge has been, even if I feel like I'm learning that the intuition is working, I know it at the time, and I could even pinpoint at that moment, I know what the answer is, or I feel what the answer is. Then it's that logical brain or the emotional response. You're like, but I really actually want to do something different right now, or I feel like I am going to try to prove to myself that that actually wasn't correct. That's where the struggle for me comes, because a lot of times your intuition is absolutely right. And even if you don't want that answer to be that right answer, you have to then trust and go with it.
That's the biggest piece.
In the long term, it's probably the right answer. Short term.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. That is the number one thing, is trusting and having faith and belief in your intuition. That's like, it's so, I'm glad you brought that up, because I noticed that there was a time that I like didn't trust, and then like things would just not like, and it would just, you know, play out in a way where I'm like, now while I was on chemo, because I was like, I'm going to do everything my intuition says. There were times where I literally, the day of, I would make plans, for instance, just giving you an example. I would make plans to go meet up with people, like with some friends. And I literally was like, planned it for like 2 weeks. And then the day of comes and intuition is still a yes to go. And literally like an hour before, and I asked the question an hour before, and it's a no. And I'm just like, are you kidding me right now? And I would listen to my intuition. I would trust it. And as much as I actually would even cry afterwards, because I felt like I was like, oh, so bad and wrong. And I'm like being a flake, and all the chitter chatter would come up. And later on, I would find out, oh my God, it's a good thing I didn't go, because I don't know, there was like a bunch of like sick people there or something. I don't remember details, but I remember always later I would realize there was a reason why I didn't. My intuition was like, no, don't do it. You know, does that make sense? Yeah. So yeah, trust is huge. And actually like saying, no, I'm not listening to the logical mind. I'm listening to the inner guide.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Totally went on this whole like.
I've taken my practice very holistic in the past, probably year and a half.
Nice.
And I mean, I think medication has its place, and we have to use it, and it's definitely important. But I've started to really kind of look at behavioral health more holistically, and it's really had such a huge impact, and I feel better as a clinician practicing rather from a more holistic space than before. So this is wonderful. I'm so glad I'm so happy we're still doing this, Anuschka, and you asked the right question.
I love it. I just to chime into Samar, because I do think it's so important, and there's no one right avenue for any one person, and even what worked for you in the last particular situation may not be the solution for this time. And so being able to draw from, whether it's intuition or mindset or nutrition or medication when it's needed or exercise, or so many broad spectrum types of solutions, and just getting clear on what's going to work for you. If you believe it will work, it probably will. And so you have to know what's that path for you.
Yeah, like I was saying, chemo, I was always the one that would never do, like till this day, I hardly have any prescription drugs, you know, but my intuition was a yes. And as much as I didn't want to do it, I was like, and I asked literally 3 different intuits, like and psychics. I do that. And no joke, every single one was like, I don't know why, I'm getting a yes, like this is gonna benefit you. And so I was like, all right, let's partner with chemo. But that's the thing, is I was like, let's partner with chemo. I'm not gonna look at it as poison in my body, right? So I think, again, it's all about like our words and how we, you know, perceive things and whatnot too, whatever we do choose. But yes, I'm a very much holistic person, and I did conventional, non-conventional, I did it all, you know? And I believe that people need to look at what works for them. Each person is completely different. Absolutely.
This has been amazing.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I know. I'm like, I think we're hitting like over an hour. Oh my goodness. We're almost at 1 o'clock. Any other questions for anyone? Oh, okay. Awesome. She said, thank you. You're so welcome. And yeah, this was awesome.
Answer to a short question.
But it wasn't really, I know, it like went in a whole different direction. That's what I love about these, because it's like there's no agenda, you know, it's like we're having a conversation, and I believe others can benefit from these conversations. So
thank you guys. Rachel, thank you so much for
Thank
coming
you,
on.
yes. Thank you. It was great having you on here.
Thank you for inviting me anytime.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it.
Yay. Do you want to, oh no, you're going to just put it in the comments.
Well,
You're
Rachel,
gonna,
why don't you go ahead and say your phone number and your website and whatever, social media, whatever information you like to share. Why not? Yeah.
Sure. Yep, you can find me here on Facebook. The tag is RACH6681. Similarly, I'll give you the email address is dr.rachelmeyer. It's RACHAELMEIR@gmail.com. And then my website is rachelmeyer, spelled the same way, .icloud.me. ICLOUD.ME.
awesome. Yay, yes. Thank you so much for joining us. Honestly, this was like a perfect, this was perfect.
I always brag about what great people Coloradans are, and I'm like very arrogant about it. But see, I mean, what great people Coloradans are.
Especially those born and raised, right?
Well, yes.
I know, she's the total native.
Just kidding. It attracts great people too, though. So does San Diego and Virginia. So.
Well, our roots are in Colorado. Yeah.
You guys are
awesome. Yay. Well, thank you again. Thanks everybody that joined and whoever listens to this later. I'll have the recording up at some point today.
Wonderful. Thank you.
All right. Bye. Come on.
Bye.
Let me go ahead and stop this.